Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a U.S. Horizon, watching the strange alien ship through the main screen. 3 months of deep space exploration had led to this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life. "They're not responding to our signals," said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake from a station. "But they're not attacking either." Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her scanner readings. "Their ship design is unlike anything in our databases. The materials alone seem decades ahead of our technology." Jake nodded slowly. The alien vessel was beautiful in its own way. Smooth curves replaced sharp angles, and it seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "Keep trying to establish communication. Use the mathematical sequences we prepared." Minutes passed before the alien ship finally responded, not with mathematics, but with perfect English transmitted directly to their communication system. "Human vessel, you will follow us to neutral meeting station. Compliance is expected." The crew exchanged worried glances. How did they know English? How did they even know they were human? "Captain," Dr. Grant whispered, "this suggests they've been watching us for some time." Jake made his decision. "Signal them that we'll follow. But Ryan, keep our weapons ready just in case." The journey to the meeting station took 6 hours. When they arrived, Jake felt his breath catch. The station was massive, easily 10 times the size of anything humans had ever built. Ships of dozens of different designs surrounded it like moths around a flame. "My God," Dr. Grant whispered. "We're not dealing with one alien species. There are dozens of them here." Ambassador Kirichin joined them on the bridge, dressed in her formal diplomatic attire. "Captain, are we ready for this?" "As ready as we can be," Jake replied. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today." The docking procedure was surprisingly smooth. The alien technology seemed to automatically adjust to accommodate their ship. As they walked through the airlock, Jake noticed that even the atmosphere had been perfectly adjusted for human breathing. The welcoming committee was unlike anything from Earth's science fiction. 12 different beings stood in a semicircle, each clearly from a different world. Some were tall and thin, others short and stocky. Some had scales, others had fur. One appeared to be made entirely of crystal. The centerpiece was an ancient-looking creature with deep purple skin and silver eyes. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am Council Prime Zexhi. Welcome to Neutral Station Kepler 7. You are the humans, yes?" Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of United Earthship Horizon. This is Ambassador Chun, Dr. Grant, and Lieutenant Commander Blake. We come in peace." Zexhi's expression was hard to read. "Peace. Yes, that is what they all say at first. Come, we have much to discuss." The meeting room was designed to accommodate all the different species. Jake noticed that chairs had been provided that seemed perfectly sized for humans, even though this was supposedly their first meeting. "You have questions," Zexhi said, settling into what looked like a throne made of living wood. "This is natural. Let me explain. We are the Galactic Council. For over 2,000 years, we have maintained peace across this galaxy. We do this by understanding each species and helping them find their proper place." Dr. Grant leaned forward. "Their proper place?" A crystalline being spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Each species has gifts. We, the crystalline hive, excel at mathematics and engineering. The Vorthans," it gestured to a group of warrior-like beings, "are masters of military strategy. The Serenai," a graceful, almost ethereal being nodded, "understand emotions and diplomacy. Everyone has their role," Zexhi continued. "It brings peace. It brings order. It brings prosperity for all." Ambassador Chen spoke carefully. "And what role do you see for humanity?" "That," said Zexhi, "is what we must determine. Tell us, humans, what are you best at?" The question caught them off guard. Jake looked at his team. "How do you summarize an entire species?" Dr. Grant spoke first. "We're scientists. We're curious about the universe and how it works." "Exploration," added Jake. "We push boundaries, go where others haven't gone." "We're also warriors when we need to be," Ryan said quietly. "We protect what matters to us." "And we're dreamers," Ambassador Chen concluded. "We imagine what could be, not just what is." The council members exchanged looks that Jake couldn't interpret. Finally, HFY spoke. Interesting. Most species have one primary trait. You claim 4. This is unusual. A Vorthan warrior leaned forward. Captain Morrison, your ship's tactical systems. They are impressive for a first-generation interstellar vessel. Ryan straightened. Thank you. We designed them based on lessons from our history. Show me, the Vorthan demanded. What followed was an impromptu tactical discussion that left even Jake amazed. Ryan didn't just explain human military thinking. He absorbed the Vorthan strategies and began suggesting improvements to both systems. Meanwhile, Dr. Grant found herself in deep conversation with a crystalline hive about faster-than-light physics. Not only was she keeping up with beings who had mastered interstellar travel for millennia, she was proposing new approaches they hadn't considered. Ambassador Chin was effortlessly navigating a complex diplomatic scenario posed by the Serenai, using a combination of logic, emotion, and intuition that seemed to impress even these natural diplomats. Jake found himself talking military history with a species called the Altarians, economic theory with the Zephyrian traders, and colonial psychology with beings whose names he couldn't pronounce. After 2 hours, HFY called for silence. This is unprecedented. The Council Prime said slowly, in all our centuries of first contacts, no species has ever demonstrated competence in multiple primary areas. Is that bad? Jake asked. It is unknown, HFY replied. The Council requires time to deliberate. You will remain on this station as our guest while we decide how to proceed. How long will this take? Ambassador Chen asked. For some decisions, days. For others, years. This decision, HFY paused. This may require the evaluation. The other council members stirred at these words. Jake noticed several looked worried. What's the evaluation? Dr. Grant asked. Something that has not been used in 800 years, HFY said. A comprehensive assessment of a species' true capabilities and potential. If humanity is to join galactic civilization, we must understand exactly what you are. As they were escorted to their quarters, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had stepped into something much larger and more dangerous than a simple first contact situation. Dr. Grant voiced what they were all thinking. Captain, I don't think they're just trying to figure out where we fit in. I think they're trying to decide if we're safe to have around at all. Through the window of his quarters, Jake looked out at the dozens of alien ships surrounding the station. Somewhere out there was a galaxy full of civilizations that had found their places and kept the peace for 2,000 years. The question was, what would they do with a species that didn't seem to fit anywhere? The next morning, Jake and his team were summoned to a different chamber. This one was stark white and filled with equipment they didn't recognize. Council Prime HFY stood, waiting with 3 other beings Jake hadn't met before. Humans, HFY began, you will now undergo the evaluation. These tests have been used to assess species for over 3,000 years. They are designed to determine your primary capabilities and limitations. The tallest of the 3 new beings stepped forward. It was made entirely of what looked like living crystal, but moved with fluid grace. I am Engineer Prime Krista, 9 of the Crystalline Hive. Dr. Grant, you will come with me first. Dr. Grant looked nervously at Jake, who nodded encouragement. As she followed the crystal being, another figure approached Ryan. This one was clearly a warrior, with thick armor-like skin and scars that spoke of many battles. I am War Master Thok. The warrior rumbled. Lieutenant Commander Blake, we will test your species' understanding of conflict. The third being was harder to describe. It seemed to shift and flow like living light, beautiful but alien beyond comprehension. I am High Empath Sarah. It said in a voice like music. Ambassador Chun, we must explore your people's capacity for understanding others. Jake found himself alone with HFY. And me. You will observe, HFY said. A captain's greatest skill is knowing his people. Watch and learn what your species truly is. Dr. Grant found herself in a laboratory that made Earth's most advanced facilities look primitive. Krista, 9 led her to a wall covered in equations that seemed to move and shift as she looked at them. These are the impossible theorems. Krista, 9 explained. Mathematics that describe the deepest workings of reality. For 2,000 years, the greatest minds of the Crystalline Hive have attempted to solve them. Many believe they cannot be solved at all. Dr. Grant stared at the equations. They were unlike anything from human mathematics, but as she looked closer, patterns began to emerge. Can I have something to write with? What happened next amazed even Krista, 9. Dr. Grant didn't just work on the problems. She approached them from angles the crystalline hive had never considered. Where they used pure logic, she used intuition. Where they followed established paths, she created new ones. After 3 hours, she had solved not one but all 7 of the impossible theorems. More than that, she had discovered 3 practical applications that could revolutionize faster-than-light travel. This is not possible. Krista, 9 whispered, its crystal form flickering with what might have been excitement or fear. You are not a crystalline mind. You should not be able to do this. Meanwhile, Ryan faced a different challenge. War Master Thok had placed him in a simulation chamber where he commanded fleets in battles against various scenarios. The Vorthan way is superior, Thok explained. We calculate every possibility, plan for every outcome, execute with perfect precision. Show me how humans wage war. The first simulation was a straightforward battle. 2 fleets meeting in open space. Ryan studied the Vorthan approach and had to admit it was impressive. Every ship moved with clockwork precision. Every strategy calculated to maximize efficiency. But when Ryan took control, he did something the Vorthans had never seen. Instead of meeting the enemy fleet directly, he scattered his forces, used psychological warfare, and turned the enemy's own strength against them. He won battles not through superior firepower, but by making his opponents defeat themselves. Impossible, Thok muttered after Ryan won his 5th consecutive scenario. Your strategies should not work. They are chaotic, unpredictable, inefficient. But they do work, Ryan pointed out. Maybe efficiency isn't everything. The psychological warfare was what really disturbed Thok. Humans didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with ideas, emotions, and the enemy's own fears. It was a concept completely foreign to the Vorthans. In another chamber, Ambassador Chen faced her own test. High Empath Sarah had presented her with a scenario that had deadlocked the Council for decades, a dispute between 3 species over mining rights that had historical, religious, and economic complexities. The Sarah and I have tried for 50 years to resolve this, Sarah explained. Our empathic abilities allow us to understand all sides, but understanding does not always lead to solutions. The logical species propose purely rational divisions. The warrior species suggest trials of strength. Nothing works. Chen studied the problem for an hour, then proposed something that stunned Sarah. Instead of choosing between the existing solutions, she suggested a completely new approach. Joint development with rotating leadership and shared profits based on a complex formula that honored each species' cultural values while maximizing economic benefit. How did you? Sarah began, then stopped. You cannot sense emotions as we do. You should not understand these people's hearts so clearly. We don't read minds, Chen explained. We use imagination. We put ourselves in others' places and try to feel what they feel. It's not perfect, but it often works. What disturbed Sarah most was that Chen's solution wasn't just acceptable to all parties. It was better than anything they considered. She had taken the best elements from each species' approach and added uniquely human concepts of compromise and creative problem-solving. Jake watched these tests through monitors in Zexhi's chamber, growing more worried with each success. The other council members who had gathered to observe were clearly disturbed. This is not how the evaluation works. Muttered one. Species excel in one area, struggle in others. It maintains balance. Your people break our models, Zexhi told Jake quietly. In 3,000 years of testing, no species has ever performed at expert level in multiple primary categories. Is that bad? Jake asked. Before Zexhi could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Jake's team was quickly returned to the main chamber, where the full council had assembled. The mood was tense. The results are unprecedented. Krista, 9, reported. The human Gran has not only solved problems that have challenged us for millennia, but has done so using methods we never considered. She combines logic with intuition, calculation with creativity. War Master Thok stepped forward reluctantly. The human Blake has demonstrated tactical abilities that surpass our greatest war leaders. But his methods are disturbing. He fights not just with weapons, but with the mind itself. And the human Chun, Sarah added, has shown diplomatic capabilities that exceed our own empathic species. She achieves understanding through imagination rather than psychic ability. Zexhai looked directly at Jake. Captain Morrison, your species presents us with a dilemma. You excel in areas that should be mutually exclusive. Scientists who are also warriors. Diplomats who are also tacticians. This combination has appeared in our galaxy only once before. When was that? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. 48,000 years ago, Zexhai replied. They were called the Devourers. They started much like you, curious, adaptable, excellent at everything they attempted. They were welcomed into galactic community with celebration. The council chamber fell silent. What happened to them? Dr. Grant asked quietly. They consumed the galaxy, Zexhai said. Not with weapons, though they mastered those too. They consumed it by being better than everyone else at everything. They learned our technologies and improved them. They studied our strategies and surpassed them. They understood our cultures and used that understanding to dominate us. Jake felt cold. Are you saying we're like them? We do not know, Zexhai admitted. That is what terrifies us. The Devourers nearly destroyed galactic civilization. It took the combined effort of 67 species to stop them, and we barely succeeded. The galaxy has spent 50,000 years recovering from that war. War Master Thok stepped forward. The question before us is simple. Are humans a return of the Devourers or something new? Do we welcome you and risk another galactic war? Or do we eliminate the threat while you are still small enough to stop? The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. They weren't just being evaluated for membership in galactic civilization. They were being evaluated for survival. How long do we have to prove we're not like them? He asked. The council will debate, Zexhai said. But know this, Captain Morrison. The galaxy fears your species more than any other, because you remind us of our greatest nightmare. You must convince us that humanity deserves to exist. Jake felt despair creeping in. So we're doomed? No matter what we do, you'll see us as a threat? Before Veltar could answer, new alarms sounded. Emergency lights bathed the library in red as the station's communication system activated. All personnel to emergency stations. Unscheduled arrival in progress. Through the library's massive windows, Jake saw a ship dropping out of hyperspace near the station. But this wasn't a council vessel. It was human. The U.S. Defiant, Jake breathed, recognizing Earth's newest and most advanced warship. What are they doing here? Veltar's ancient eyes widened with something that might have been fear. Captain Morrison, your species has just made a terrible mistake. The Council gave specific orders that no other human ships were to enter the system. Jake's communicator crackled to life. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Kate Phillips aboard the U.S. Defiant. We've come to bring you home. But as Jake watched the Defiant approach the station, he saw something that chilled him to the bone. The ship wasn't just advanced by human standards. It was incorporating alien technology. Somehow, in the weeks since first contact, Earth had reverse-engineered council systems and improved upon them. War Master Thok's voice echoed through the station's corridors, all council vessels to battle stations. The humans have revealed their true nature. Jake realized with growing horror that humanity had just proved the council's worst fears correct. Like every convergent species before them, humans had encountered advanced technology and immediately set about mastering it. The Defiant was proof that humanity wouldn't be contained or limited. Archivist, Jake said urgently, we need to stop this before it becomes a war. But Veltar was already activating emergency protocols. Captain Morrison, the Council predicted this moment. Your species has followed the pattern exactly. The Defiant's arrival will be interpreted as proof that humans cannot be trusted to honor agreements or respect boundaries. Through the communication system, Jake heard Council Prime Zexhai's voice, cold with finality. The humans have shown their nature. Like all convergent species, they see advanced technology and immediately seek to possess and improve it. The evaluation is complete. Humanity has failed. Jake watched as Council ships began moving to intercept the Defiant. The alien vessels were clearly superior, but he knew human ingenuity. If the Defiant had incorporated alien technology, it might actually stand a chance. That realization terrified him more than anything else, because it meant the Council was right. Humanity would fight, adapt, learn, and probably survive this encounter. And in surviving, they would become exactly what the galaxy feared most. The pattern is complete. Veltar said sadly, "Your species will now follow the path of all convergence. First contact, evaluation, conflict, expansion, and eventually war with the entire galaxy." Jake looked out at the approaching battle, knowing that everything that happened next would determine not just humanity's fate, but possibly the fate of the entire galaxy. The historical pattern was clear, and humanity was following it perfectly. The only question now was whether this time would be different, or whether the galaxy was about to face its 8th convergent war. Jake and his team were confined to their quarters while the Council debated. Days passed without word, then weeks. The waiting was almost worse than the tests. Finally, Jake was summoned alone to a vast library deep within the station. The being waiting for him was unlike any he had seen. Ancient didn't begin to describe it. Its skin looked like old parchment, and its 6 eyes held the weight of millennia. "I am Archivist Veltar, keeper of the great library," it said in a voice like rustling leaves. "Council Prime Zexhai has ordered me to research your species' parallels in galactic history. What I have found troubles me greatly." The library stretched beyond sight in all directions. Floating displays showed star charts, historical records, and images of species Jake had never imagined. Veltar led him to a section marked with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift. "These are the forbidden records," Veltar explained. "History too dangerous to be widely known. Here lie the true accounts of the convergent species." Convergent species? Those who refuse to be limited to one primary ability. In 3 million years of recorded galactic history, there have been 7. Your species shows all the signs of being the 8th. Veltar activated a display showing a timeline stretching back eons. 7 points were marked in red, each followed by periods of galactic upheaval. "The pattern is always the same," Veltar continued. "A species emerges that excels at multiple disciplines. At first, they are welcomed as remarkable. They contribute to galactic civilization, sharing knowledge and improving life for all. But then, the display shifted to show images of war. Entire star systems burning, fleets beyond counting locked in battle. Planets reduced to ash. They grow restless with their assigned roles. They begin to question why they should be limited. They start taking what they believe they deserve. Always, they justify their actions as being for the greater good." Jake stared at the images. The Devourers did all this. The Devourers were merely the most recent, Veltar said sadly. Before them were the Unity, who believed all species should be merged into one perfect form. Before them, the Shepherds, who decided the galaxy needed their guidance whether it wanted it or not. Each began with noble intentions. The Archivist led Jake to another display, this one showing Earth's history. Jake was stunned to see records of human civilization stretching back thousands of years. "You have been watching us," Jake realized. "We watch all emerging species," Veltar confirmed. "But humans have been of particular interest for the past century. Your rate of technological advancement, your adaptability in warfare, your ability to unite diverse populations against common threats, all match the historical pattern." Jake saw images of Earth's world wars, the space race, first lunar landings. But Veltar's analysis highlighted disturbing parallels he had never considered. "Your Second World War," Veltar pointed out. "Humanity faced an enemy and adapted their tactics, learned their weaknesses, turned their own weapons against them. Classic convergent behavior. We were defending ourselves," Jake protested, "as did all the others initially. Look at your space program. You took German rocket technology and improved it. You studied Soviet achievements and surpassed them. You built on others' work and made it better." The pattern was becoming clear, and Jake didn't like where it was leading. "Your species' ability to learn from enemies and incorporate their strengths is remarkable," Veltar continued. "But it is also terrifying. The Devourers started the same way. They would encounter a new species, learn their abilities, and somehow master those abilities better than the species who had evolved them." Another display activated. showing Jake something that made his blood run cold. It was a recording from Earth, showing human scientists working to understand alien technology they had barely glimpsed. Dr. Grant's solutions to the impossible theorems, Veltar explained. She didn't just solve them. She understood the mathematical principles better than species who had studied them for millennia, then immediately found practical applications. This is textbook convergent behavior. Jake wanted to argue, but the evidence was overwhelming. What happened to the others? The 6 convergent species before the Devourers? All were destroyed, Veltar said quietly. Some by galactic alliance, others by civil wars when their own nature turned them against each other. The galaxy learned long ago that convergent species cannot be allowed to reach full development. But we're not like them, Jake insisted. We came in peace. We want to cooperate, not dominate. That is exactly what they all said, Veltar replied. The Devourer's first words to the galactic community were, "We come in peace and friendship." The Unity spoke of cooperation and mutual benefit. The Shepherds claimed they only wanted to help. The battle between the U.S. Defiant and the Council Patrol lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Jake stared in shock at the tactical displays. The Defiant hadn't just survived against superior numbers. It had disabled 2 Council ships and forced the others to retreat. Admiral Phillips arrived on the station under a temporary ceasefire, her expression grim as she met with Jake and Council Prime Zexhai. "Captain Morrison," she said, "Earth sent me to bring you home." The Council's messages about evaluation were interpreted as threats. "We don't negotiate under duress." Zexhai's ancient eyes were cold. "Admiral Phillips, your ship incorporates technology stolen from our vessels. This confirms our worst fears about humanity. We reverse-engineered technology from your probe that's been watching Earth for months," Phillips replied flatly. "If you didn't want us studying it, you shouldn't have left it where we could find it." Jake realized the situation had spiraled beyond anyone's control. Both sides were acting according to their nature, and that nature was driving them toward war. "There has to be another way," Jake said desperately. But Zexhai was already speaking into a communication device. Within hours, representatives from all 12 council species had assembled. What Jake witnessed next would haunt him for the rest of his life. "The evaluation is complete," Zexhai announced to the full council. "Humanity displays all the characteristics of a convergent species. They excel in multiple primary areas, they adapt and improve upon others' technologies, and they respond to perceived threats with immediate advancement of their capabilities." Engineer Prime Krista, 9, stepped forward. "The evidence is conclusive. In mere weeks since first contact, they have mastered technologies that took us centuries to develop." War Master Thok added grimly, "Their tactical adaptability exceeds our projections. The battle with the Defiant proved they can defeat superior forces through innovation and unpredictability." High Empath Sarah spoke last. "Most disturbing is their ability to unite diverse populations under stress. Earth's governments have achieved unprecedented cooperation since our first contact. This mirrors exactly how the Devourers built their empire." Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on them. "What are you saying?" Zexhai stood, and Jake could see the pain in the ancient being's expression. "The Galactic Council hereby issues an ultimatum to the species known as humanity. You have 1 standard year to choose between 2 options." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery. "Option 1. Submit to genetic modification therapy. We will limit your species' adaptability to a single primary specialization. You will be assigned roles within galactic civilization and integrated peacefully." Jake felt sick. "And option 2? Complete extinction of your species," Zexhai said without emotion. "We cannot permit another convergent war. The galaxy will not survive it." Admiral Phillips stood slowly. "And if we choose neither option? Then you will face a combined might of 67 species," War Master Thok replied. "The same force that barely defeated the Devourers. But this time we are prepared." Jake looked around the chamber at beings from across the galaxy, all united in their fear of what humanity might become. He realized they weren't evil or cruel. They were terrified. 1 year, he said. 1 Earth year, Zexhai confirmed. Use it wisely. The journey back to Earth was tense. Admiral Phillips briefed Jake on what had happened during his absence. The discovery of the alien probe had unified Earth's governments in ways nothing else ever had. Scientists were working around the clock to understand alien technology. Military forces were being integrated and expanded. Social barriers were dissolving as humanity prepared for whatever was coming. We're doing exactly what they predicted. Jake realized. Unity in the face of external threat. Rapid technological advancement. Military preparation. What choice do we have? Phillips replied. They're threatening to exterminate us if we don't submit to genetic modification. What species would accept that? When they reached Earth, Jake found a world transformed. Cities buzzed with activity as construction projects created new research facilities. The night sky was bright with orbital platforms and shipyards. Earth looked like a world preparing for war. President Marcus Johnson met them at the spaceport, his expression troubled. Captain Morrison, Admiral Phillips, what's our situation? Jake delivered his report to the combined leadership of Earth's governments. The reaction was exactly what he feared it would be. They want to lobotomize our species, said one general. Make us into specialized drones like the rest of their galaxy. The genetic modifications would eliminate what makes us human, added a scientist. Our creativity, our adaptability, our drive to excel. And extinction isn't an option either. President Johnson concluded. So we fight. But as the months passed, Jake began to see something that gave him hope. Humanity wasn't just preparing for war. They were trying to prevent it. Commander Alex Rivera led secret diplomatic missions to make contact with oppressed populations within Council space. Dr. Amy Watson worked on technology that could reverse genetic modifications. Most importantly, they were reaching out to younger members of Council species who questioned their rigid system. We've made contact with rebel groups on 17 worlds. Rivera reported to the Leadership Council. Species have been forced into single roles for so long they've forgotten they once had choices. The genetic modification technology isn't permanent, Dr. Watson added. It can be reversed. We could potentially free entire species from their limitations. Jake realized that humanity was approaching the problem differently than previous convergent species. Instead of trying to dominate through superiority, they were building alliances through liberation. But the galaxy was watching. As the year progressed, a massive fleet assembled at the edge of human space. Ships from all 67 Council member species, armed with weapons that could sterilize entire worlds. The ultimatum deadline approached like a storm on the horizon. Earth's leaders met in emergency session to deliver their final decision. President Johnson stood before the assembled representatives of humanity. The Galactic Council has given us two choices: submit to genetic modification or face extinction. We reject both options. The chamber erupted in cheers, but Jake felt only dread. He knew what was coming next. We choose a third path, Johnson continued. We will not submit to limitations on our potential, and we will not go quietly into extinction. If the galaxy wants to destroy us for being what we are, then we will show them what we can become. The message was transmitted to the Council fleet waiting at the edge of the solar system. Council Prime Zexhi's response came within hours, broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity has chosen the path of all convergent species. They reject limitation and defy extinction. The galaxy has seen this before. We know how this ends. But Jake wondered if Zexhi truly understood what humanity had chosen. Because as reports came in from across the galaxy, it became clear that the human rebellion had inspired something unprecedented. The first interspecies revolution in galactic history. Species that had been locked into single roles for millennia were remembering what it meant to have choices. Young council members were questioning traditions thousands of years old. The rigid order that had maintained galactic peace for 2 millennia was beginning to crack. The war that was coming wouldn't be humanity against the galaxy. It would be the old order against those who demanded the right to exceed their limitations. Jake looked up at the stars, knowing that in a matter of days, the largest military force in galactic history would arrive at Earth. But for the first time since the evaluation began, he felt hope, because humanity had done something no previous convergent species had managed. They had convinced others to fight for the same freedom they saw for themselves. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, humanity's newest flagship. watching the largest fleet in galactic history drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 67 species, thousands of ships, weapons that could crack planets in half. But they weren't alone. Admiral Captain Nina Walsh reported from her station, "Rebel forces are taking position throughout the system. I count ships from 43 different species." Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, joined Phillips at the main display. "Commander Rivera's diplomatic missions work better than we hoped. Half the galaxy is in revolt. The rebellion had spread faster than anyone anticipated. Species that had been locked into single roles for millennia were breaking free. The crystalline hive's younger generation had developed emotional capacity. Young Vorthans had learned creativity. Sarah and I were discovering logic and reason beyond pure emotion. Most shocking of all was the presence of Zixhai, Council Prime Zexhai's own daughter, leading a fleet of reformed Council ships. "Attention all vessels," came a transmission from the Rebel flagship. "This is Zixhai, speaking for the Liberation Alliance. We stand with humanity not because they are perfect, but because they showed us that perfection isn't the goal. Growth is." The Council's response came from their massive command ship, a vessel the size of a small moon. "Daughter," Zexhai's voice carried pain across space, "you've been infected by human ideas. This rebellion will destroy the order that has kept peace for 2,000 years. "Father," Zixhai replied, "that peace came at the cost of our souls. We became so afraid of chaos that we chose stagnation. Humanity has shown us there is a third option: control growth through cooperation." Jake watched the two fleets face each other across the void. The Council forces still outnumbered the Rebels, but not by much. More concerning was the fact that many Rebel ships had incorporated human modifications, making them unpredictable in battle. Dr. Amy Watson's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Morrison, the quantum modification reversal system is ready. If we can get close enough to the Council ships, we can free their crews from genetic limitations in real time." "That's assuming they'll let us get close enough," Phillips replied grimly. The standoff lasted 6 hours. Neither side wanted to fire the first shot, knowing it would ignite a war that could consume the galaxy. Finally, Zexhai broke the silence. "Humans, you have corrupted half the galaxy with your refusal to accept natural order. This ends now." The Council fleet began moving toward Earth, but the Rebels moved to intercept. What followed wasn't a single battle, but dozens of engagements scattered across the solar system. Jake found himself commanding a mixed fleet of human, crystalline, and reformed Vorthan ships against a Council battle group near Mars. The difference from previous galactic conflicts was immediately apparent. Instead of rigid formations and predictable tactics, the Rebel forces fought with creativity and adaptation. A young crystalline engineer named Zentao had learned human intuition and was solving tactical problems in real time. A Vorthan commander called Breck had developed human-style improvisation and was outmaneuvering his own former comrades. Most remarkable was the cooperation. Species that had never worked together were sharing technologies, strategies, and even crews. Human tacticians worked with Saranai empaths to predict enemy movements. Crystalline engineers collaborated with human scientists to modify weapons mid-battle. This is what the Council feared most. Jake realized as he watched the human Vorthan tactical team achieve something neither species could have managed alone. Not that we would dominate them, but that we would show them what they could be if they weren't afraid to grow. The turning point came when Dr. Watson successfully deployed her modification reversal technology on a Council ship. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Crystalline crew members suddenly experienced emotion for the first time in centuries. Vorthan warriors discovered they could create as well as destroy. Saranai empaths found they could think logically without losing their emotional connection. Most of the affected crew immediately switched sides. The genetic modifications aren't just limiting abilities, Dr. Watson reported excitedly. They're suppressing the natural growth potential that all species possess. Every being in the galaxy has converging capacity. It's just been artificially restricted. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't about humanity being special or dangerous. It was about the artificial limitations imposed on every species to maintain the old order. Word spread through both fleets as more Council ships were affected by the reversal technology. Entire battle groups stopped fighting, as their crews experienced capabilities they had never known they possessed. Council Prime Zexhai watched his forces dissolving around him from the bridge of his command ship. Finally, he opened a communication channel to Jake. "Admiral Morrison, you have destroyed everything we built. 2,000 years of peace gone." "Council Prime," Jake replied carefully, "we haven't destroyed peace. We've shown that peace doesn't require limitation. You can have order without stagnation, cooperation without oppression." "You don't understand," Zexhai said, and Jake could hear centuries of pain in the ancient being's voice. "I was there during the Devourer War. I saw what convergent species become. The death, the destruction, the consuming hunger for more. But we're not alone," Jake pointed out. "The Devourers try to dominate through superiority. We're succeeding through liberation. We're not trying to rule the galaxy. We're trying to free it." The final battle took place in Earth's orbit, where Zexhai made one last desperate attempt to prevent what he saw as galactic catastrophe. His massive command ship engaged a combined human-rebel fleet in a battle that lit up the night sky. But the real victory came when Zexhai used Dr. Watson's technology on her father's ship. Suddenly, Council Prime Zexhai experienced something he hadn't felt in millennia: the capacity to grow and change. The effect on the ancient leader was profound. For the first time in centuries, he could see beyond the rigid patterns that had governed his thinking. He could imagine possibilities beyond the old order. The war ended not with defeat, but with transformation. 6 months later, Jake stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly building on the neutral world of Haven. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered not as rigid specialists, but as complete beings exploring their full potential. Council Prime Zexhai, now simply called Elder Zexhai, approached Jake after session. "Admiral Morrison," he said, "I owe your species an apology. We feared you would become like the Devourers, but you became something we never imagined: liberators." "We all became something new," Jake replied. "That was the point." Elder Zexhai nodded slowly. "The galaxy spent 50,000 years afraid of change, afraid of growth, afraid of becoming something we couldn't control. Your species showed us that the only thing worse than uncontrolled growth is no growth at all." Through the assembly hall's windows, Jake could see ships from hundreds of species docked together. Former enemies worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The galaxy was chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes difficult to manage. It was also alive in a way it hadn't been for millennia. Ambassador Kira Chin joined them at the window. "The new constitution is ready for final vote," she reported. "Equal representation, no artificial limitations, and the right of all species to develop their full potential. And if another truly dangerous convergent species emerges?" Zexhai asked. Jake smiled. "Then we'll face them together as equals, with all our capabilities intact. That's the difference between the old galaxy and the new one. We don't control threats by limiting ourselves. We face them by becoming our best selves." As the vote was called, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been feared as a return of the Devourers, but they had chosen a different path. Instead of using their abilities to dominate, they had used them to liberate. The galaxy no longer feared humanity. Instead, it was grateful for the reminder that growth, change, and the courage to exceed limitations weren't threats to be controlled, but gifts to be celebrated. The age of artificial boundaries was over. The age of unlimited potential had begun.